I'm pursuing truth, but not only pursuing truth, but finding this new way of living, which is astonishing. So the Course would refer to a miracle, it's a Course in Miracles, refer to a miracle as a change in perception. It's basically from an unloving thought about something to a loving thought about something. Now that can cover huge amounts of ground. And there's a fantastic teacher, Louise Hay had mentioned, is one of the great teachers of our time. And there's another one named Byron Katie who does something called The Work. You know The Work.
Yes.
So she basically said, one of the great insights that she has is that if you think an unloving thought, which I define as the belief that something should be different, reality should be different. Mm-hmm. And that could have to do with anything. That could have to do with ISIS or who the president is or anything. If you think something should be different, you can just observe, if you can see your feelings, you suffer. And if you think something shouldn't be different, you decide, everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be. Well, that seems meaningful. And back to the Course, you're never upset for the reason you think. Mm-hmm. You're basically upset because you're thinking unloving thoughts. Mm-hmm. You're thinking something should be different. That's always the reason you're upset. That's pretty radical. Right? It's not because the stock market crashed. It's not because ISIS is horrible. It's not because Trump's president. It's not because the Democrat's president, if you've got different stripes. It's not because everybody dies or because of whatever. It's because we're having unloving thoughts about the situation.
That's arguing with reality.
We're arguing with reality is the way Byron Katie would put it.
Right.
But we can see that whenever, this is I think this is observable. This isn't theory, this is observable. Mm-hmm. That when you think an unloving thought about something, you suffer. Mm-hmm. And when you think a loving thought about something, you don't. Mm-hmm. So how would you expand that? How can you expand it so that your whole view of reality are loving thoughts? If for no other reason, let's just leave truth, whether it's true or not, over here for a second. We won't consider that for a second. Mm-hmm. Let's consider the idea that, okay, well, I have a choice now that I know this. Mm-hmm. Oh, I can complain about global warming and think that something should be different, or let's think some biggie, that's a biggie right now. Mm-hmm. Or I can worry about the virus. Mm-hmm. And think, things should be, I'd be happier if that wasn't there, or it shouldn't be there, blah, 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 so-and-so shouldn't have done this, or whatever. Or I can think, wow, I'm better off if for some reason, though I might not know what it is, I don't know what it is in these cases, mm-hmm. if for some reason everything is exactly as it should be. I'm not arguing that it is. But I am saying that I believe it's true that you will suffer if you think it shouldn't be the way it is. Mm-hmm. And you won't if you can somehow see a possible explanation that, well, maybe it is exactly the way it should be. Religious people would say everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. God's in charge and knows what he's doing or she's doing, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's always a more peaceful experience. So whether you believe in religion or not, whether you believe in God or not, whether you believe in any of these things or not, it is a very simple choice. Mm-hmm. And if that's true, and we're interested in our self-interest, and even truth, because why is that true? Mm. That's very interesting that that's true. Why is that true? Yeah. That when we think an unloving thought, we suffer. It's like the body knows something. Mm-hmm. It's like giving feedback. Mm-hmm. It's like you're putting poison in your system. Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's kicking it. It's like saying, don't, not this one. Don't drink this. Mm-hmm. Don't eat this. Don't consume that thought. Mm-hmm. It's bad for you. Mm-hmm. So wouldn't it be worth considering a theology or way of thinking, thought system, whatever you want to put it? Let's use language that doesn't isolate anybody. Like everybody's welcomed, right? Mm-hmm. Let's use some language that lets people say, well, how could we, is there a way of thinking about all of this, about everything, that would be comprehensively loving without omission? Mm. Yeah. Right? And that would be the one that would give us the deepest peace. And even if it's just about finding peace for our lives, wouldn't that be worth it? Mm-hmm. So from that point of view, I think that it's worth considering trying to find a theology, philosophy, whatever, that only consists of loving explanations for things.
Mm-hmm.
Non-dualistic. And people will say that we believe in one God.
Mm-hmm.
I have this definition of God as being whatever you think has power.
Okay.
Yeah, so everybody believes in gods if that's the case. Some
Right.
people who believes money has power, right?
Yeah.
But like of the 8 billion people in the world, we're going to get a lot of hands on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Who believes that military force has power, right? Who believes that maybe sexuality or intelligence or lots of other things, social position,
Mm-hmm.
all these things have power. Well, if you're looking, and then the alternative is that only one thing has power.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about monotheism, like the belief in one God.
Mm-hmm.
So what if the belief in one God really means the belief in one power? Yeah?
Yeah.
So it reframes it, right?
Right.
So if that's true, then what we're being asked to do is find one thing so that then there'd be no conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Then all those other things actually wouldn't be powers, they'd be illusions of power. So, and what the Bible and mystery teachings and teachings, the mystical teachings and teachings from all different religions say is that love is power. Not because it's sweet, not because it's nice, not because it feels good, but because it's true.
Okay.
It alone has the power to give life. It alone has the power to sustain life. Alone has the power to create anything at all. That's the idea. So because of this,
Yeah.
we're better off considering the idea that, maybe love, because loving thoughts make us feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a universal perspective in which only love is powerful. One loving God.
Mm-hmm.
Love is God. Not God is love, but love is God.
Okay.
Love is power. Love is the only power. And I would submit that that's the only theology you can have that will work and will bring peace without conflict.
And that came from the Course? Your experience of the Course?
It came from my experience of the Course, and I think the Course is really saying that when it's saying you're free.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying you are creating your experience. God is giving you the freedom to decide what you put your attention on. Mm-hmm. So like just as an example, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you pick up your right thumb and look at the middle of the thumbnail,
mm-hmm.
then look at the teacup,
yeah,
and then look at my foot, or look at your knee or whatever. We quickly establish
yes.
that you have the power to decide what you put your attention on.
Yes.
Right? So thoughts are things too.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the power. I mean, you can sense you have the power to decide, am I going to think a loving thought or an unloving thought?
Mm-hmm.
I get to decide what I put my attention on, one or the other.
Yes.
So what if we put our attention on just the idea that there's one God and that there's one power and it's love? And then ask the question, how would that be? What would have to be true for that to be the case? Does that even make sense in my experience of life? Mm-hmm. Might it be the case? What would that mean? And then you start looking at the sacred text and go, they're already talking about this. Worldly powers, idols. These are beliefs in something other than love is power. Thou shalt have no God before me. In other words, only believe in the power of love is another way of looking at that. Right? And what does Jesus say? Love thy neighbor as thyself. Love your enemies. Mm-hmm. So if kind of summing up the theology, a bit of the Course and the way of mastery too, because we're into that. I mean, it's not a total summation, but a little bit of an introduction to the idea is that only love is powerful. Love is God. Mm-hmm. We're investigating a theology which would be in our best interests, right? One in which only love is directing our attentions. We have the power to choose what we put our attention on. So it's as if we're going into a movie theater. Mm-hmm. God's created the movie theater. We didn't create reality, is what it's saying. It's saying you didn't create reality, but you get to decide how you experience it. God has this movie theater with umpteen trillion movies that you can experience, and you can put your attention on any one, and it can be a horror movie, mm-hmm. It can be a romance, it can be a bliss-happy movie, it can be anything. You get the freedom to decide which one you go to. Mm-hmm. And that freedom never goes away no matter what you do, period. And if you don't like the movie at a certain time, you can get up and leave and go to another one. and that's reality.
Hmm.
And that's sort of a loving explanation.
So I'm always at choice.
You're always, and everything, and if you want to know what your choices have been,
Mhm.
just look around.
Right.
This is it.
Yeah. My life demonstrates
Your
my
life,
choices.
your life is demonstrating your choices. And most of all, the quality of your experience is demonstrating your choice. Am I choosing unloving thoughts?
Mm.
Am I believing that something should be different?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I somehow being willing to say, well, gee, maybe God's got it covered.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm having a problem, it's not that reality has a problem. It's not that the devil is opposing God. That's a pretty weak God,
Mm-hmm.
right? What if God's so powerful that he's not opposed?
Mm-hmm.
Remember the old heavyweight champions, Muhammad Ali and so on. I was growing up, like the greatest champion was one that everybody knew couldn't be opposed.
Mm. Right.
Like otherwise, you've got a weak God.
Yes.
So what if God isn't split and isn't divided and everything's happening under the umbrella of God's loving will? And that we're simply having the freedom to choose experience. It's a loving explanation. So Jesus teaches, right? Love your enemies.
Yes.
So if you're free and what you're seeing out there is kind of a projection,
Yes.
like I don't know if you watched Star Trek, there was a holodeck in Star
Yes.
Trek, and they put a little CD or something back in the day in the wall, and then they go in this room, and the room would be an exact representation of what was on the CD.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what the Course is saying and the way Master is saying is you're the one creating the CD, you're the one putting it in the wall, and you're the one walking in the room and having the experience, even to the point of forgetting everything that came prior to walking into the room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this and other worlds are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool, it's interesting, and it starts proving itself to you when you do the workbooks of the Course.
Mm-hmm.
Physical laws start being transcended, miracles start happening, and the Holy Spirit guides. So, like just on the love your enemies piece,
Mm-hmm.
what I find is like my understanding of a lot of traditional religion, Christianity, and other things too. The teachings in the sacred text start becoming much more alive when these new teachings of Jesus Christ
Mm-hmm.
elaborate and fill in and complete
Mm.
the teachings which are alluded to in the New Testament often.
Yes.
So one example is, let's say that we have this view of reality in which we're free, and so the movie that we're experiencing is one that we're free to create. Ye shall be as gods, right?
Mm-hmm.
That illuminates that statement to a certain extent. But what about the love your enemies? We take it as love that guy over, love Bin Laden, or love the person who throws the trash in your front yard, or whatever it is, love that guy, which is true. That's an important first step. But really, if you start seeing that the thing that's causing your suffering is your choice to think an unloving thought, not what's happening outside of you,
Yes.
that's a massive transition.
Mm-hmm.
If you're willing to accept that, which is a loving explanation of reality,
Mm-hmm.
because you're free, you're not subject to all these things outside of you. If that's true, let's just say if it's true, then what's your enemy? Your enemy isn't an event or a being in the world. Your enemy is your unloving thoughts. Because that's the only thing that's causing your suffering.
So even to love the parts in you that are creating suffering.
To love the unloving thoughts.
Yeah.
Not to judge them. A judgment is defined as like this belief that something should be different and fighting against it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's an energetic charge. I really know that this should be different. I know that whatever, that woman shouldn't hit her child.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just, this obviously will get super radical at some point if people follow this thought idea. Well, we're better off if she should be.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that one doesn't act lovingly in a compassionate way that might help heal the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But it means that you're able to be present to it without a whole lot of hatred on your side, which is just going to make the whole thing worse and judgment of her.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we embrace the whole thing and somehow, well, maybe everything's just the way it's supposed to be. Maybe this is a situation calling for healing, but not for condemnation. What's another key? That illuminates another key teaching that Jesus offers, that to me, these are two of the main ones, is do not judge. And without judging a lot of modern Christianity, because I don't know what they should be doing just what they're doing.
Right.
right? And as far as I'm concerned, and they're learning something and going where they're going, but how much of it seems to be causing a lot of suffering and conflict because they're judging.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're saying that shouldn't be that way instead of just loving everything, loving the sin and the sinner, right? Loving everything because they're having faith that God is love and that we can trust that. And so anytime we have something in ourselves so you could say that anytime I've got an issue, anytime I'm upset, it's not because of something out there.
It's a thought I'm having about it.
Because I'm choosing to allow an unloving thought to still live in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jesus becomes the way shower. Yeshua, his Aramaic name, Yeshua, is the name of the way shower. He asks us to follow him in this process of, he's being crucified. I mean, imagine, we can't really, can we?
No.
And he still chooses to have a loving thought towards, because that's what he values. That's what he's teaching us in the lesser situations in our lives, which are pretty much all lesser situations.
Right.
He's saying, well, how about being loving in this situation? Your neighbor was rude to you. How about forgiving and seeing them in a loving way instead of in an unloving way?
Mm-hmm.
So just as a sort of a segue, I mean, from the Course is this amazing thing. And then at the end of the Course, it says, this isn't the end. At the end of the workbook, it says, I hope I'm not giving this away for people. It says, this isn't the end, it's the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
From now on, you will put in the hands of your internal teacher, the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit will guide you.
Mm-hmm.
So the amazing, miraculous, incredible gift of the Course is putting you in the hands of your internal teacher. Mm-hmm. And I will say I've had 10,000 experiences of miraculously walking through situations. I mean, like the book thing is just a tiny little example.
Yeah. Healing
Relationships, having incredible things happen.
Do you want to share?
Well, I'll share one.
Okay.
So this is when this is not long after the book thing, so it's way back. And I'm still trying to see if I believe in this thing, if I believe this is real or not. And so I'm trying to listen and follow a voice that I don't know is real. So one day I get up, and I have to give a little backstory on this. So I've been running an art gallery in Rhode Island. And the art gallery was a summer gallery and was only open on weekends in September and October.
Okay.
And my home was in Massachusetts at the time, so I'm down staying in Rhode Island. But I'm there all week because I've got to take care of some business stuff. But basically, I've got a lot of free time on my hands because the gallery's only open on the weekends. So back in August when the gallery was busy, I'd have some downtime. I was sitting and I'd sort of entertain myself and say stuff like, well, what are my 20 favorite movies, just to fill the time. But what's my 20 favorite albums? Who would I most like to meet? And my career is I've been a exhibiting visual artist since I got out of college. So I'm thinking, well, what artists would I most like to meet? That's a natural question for me to ask. So I think, well, Dali was alive. Dali's a major international guy. Some of the abstract expressionists were alive, de Kooning and so on. These are major famous guys. But for me, I'd been to a show when I was 7 in Boston, and I saw Andrew Wyatt's paintings. He's a realist. And that had a huge impact on my life, seeing his paintings. One of the main reasons I became an artist. And he also talks about painting the way that the Course talks about reality. He says, if I love something more than anything else, I'll see it more clearly and therefore be able to paint it better. Thinking, wow, that's right on. And I love his work. So I think really Wyatt's the guy. Like, the critics may not approve of my choice, but I don't really care. Wyatt's my man. And then I go on to, this is in August, and then I go on to, what's my 10 favorite baseball players. I mean, I just go on, forget that I ever had the conversation with myself and move on. So jump forward a couple months, it's middle of October, and I've decided that I have nothing to do on this day. It's a Wednesday or something, middle of the week. I've finished all the business I need to do. I got to wait till the weekend till the gallery's open again. And I realize I have a complete day that I can dedicate entirely to the Holy Spirit, to trying to listen to this thing to see if it's real. And I'd lived in Manhattan just prior to that and kind of left. I didn't really like the city, left on bad terms. And, and didn't know what I was going to do with my day. And I thought, I'm going to surrender any idea of what I'm going to do with my day. I'm going to literally just ask second by second what to do now. So I go get the morning newspaper, which I usually do, and just to give an idea of the type of car I was driving at the time, I was driving back from getting the paper and going up the hill. I noticed this car part lying in the middle of the road, which I forget what it was at the time. It was a distributor cap or something that was, you know, an important part of a car. And I think that's mine. I think it just fell off the car, and sure enough, it had. So I picked it up and clipped it back on, and so I'm thinking, okay, well, we'll just have faith the car's going to keep running, and we'll just go wherever we go. And my little voice says, drive south. So there used to be a little restaurant that I went to for breakfast, which is a mile south of where I was. I thought, oh, maybe we're going to breakfast. That's cool.
You and Holy Spirit.
Me and Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
We're off in our reliable automobile off driving south. So I go. This is actually written up in a book. When God spoke to me.
Mm.
And so I'm going south, and I go past the place, and I'm like, okay. And I keep going, and half an hour later, I'm like, you know, we're supposed to go south. The little voice keeps saying, just get into Connecticut, driving through Connecticut, another hour goes by, keep going south. Get to New Haven, it's a couple hours from where my house was, and I'm starting to get this idea, maybe we're going to New York. End up in New York. I parked at the Met where I used to visit a lot when I was an art student, when I was there. And I ended up going to all the places guided by Holy Spirit that I'd had kind of unhappy. It was in the mid 80s, it was a rough city then, you know. I won't go into details, but it was just that I had a very challenging time being there. And everyone was out of their way polite. And everybody had been really rude, like, you know, it was a regular thing in my experience of being there. I'm like, what is going on here? This is unbelievable. Every place I went that had seemed dark was light, and had these. I remember going to the pizza place. I used to get pizza all the time, and the guy would just kind of thrust it at you, and, you know, kind of give you the finger as he's handing you the pizza. And this time he's like, oh, you know, can I get you napkins for that? If you need anything else, let me know. I'm like, what is going on? This is bizarre. Same guy. And so I end up going up to the east side and go to this gallery, really nice gallery. It's not there anymore, called the Coker Gallery. And I go in, and all these wait staff are getting things ready, hors d'oeuvres and stuff, and they're going to have an opening that night. Now, people who know the Wyeth family know that there's a father, N.C. Wyeth, who was a very famous illustrator. Famous enough that they had presidents at the house to dinner and so on, back in the day of great illustrators. Then the son, Andrew, who's my favorite, and then his son, Jamie Wyeth. Oh. The three generations of, you know, important American artists. So Jamie Wyeth, whose work I like, I'm not super excited, but I think it's cool it's there, is having an exhibit at Coker, and this is like big stuff. Like, yeah, this is in the early 80s, and the paintings are $125,000. You know, that's type of stuff. And I walk, and they let me walk around, even though the show wasn't opening. It's opening that night. Well, and I think, well, this is really cool. I get to see the work. It's really fun. And I go off and do the rest of my stuff. It gets to be late in the afternoon, and I go, Holy Spirit, this has been an amazing day. Like, I'm so convinced that you're real. Time to go home, right? We got a 3.5 hour drive. It's getting dark. Stick around. A little voice says, stick around? You're sure? Like, I checked 3 times, and I remembered the hammer enough times, so I thought, okay, I'll stick around. So I end up going back to the gallery, to the opening. Now, Andrew Wyeth is a hermit, doesn't come out, even to his son's show. So I don't have any, you know, I'm not thinking, you know, because you might naturally think, oh, you know, wow, maybe I'll get to see Andrew Wyeth. That's, you know, I'm like, no, that's, you know, he doesn't come out. So I'm going around, and I'm in the gallery, and Jamie Wyeth's there. I get to meet Jamie Wyeth, which is really cool for me. Yeah. And a lot of the heavy hitters in the New York art scene are there. And they're coming up to me and asking them if I would introduce them to Jamie Wyeth. And this weird energy, it's just wild, like anything could happen. Like, what's going on? So my little voice goes, go to the front of the gallery now. So I walk right over to the front of the gallery, right by the door. And unbeknownst to anyone except for him and the gallery director, Andrew Wyeth had decided to come to the show to surprise his son. Mm-hmm. He walks in the door. I'm standing right next to him. 2 people get to speak to him briefly, and I'm one of them. Wow. I get to shake his hand and thank you for his influence. He bows, and I realize this guy is as legit as I thought he was. And this amazing experience. So the first day that I surrender entirely to the Holy Spirit, it has me drive 3.5 hours south, and I meet one of the people I would most like to meet in the whole world.
Wow.
Who never comes out because he's a hermit and he's always painting. And no one else knew that he was coming except for the gallery director. So, and as I said, got to meet Andrew Wyeth, have a genuine connection with him. He was very humble, bowed down. I realized he was completely legit. And then he was whisked upstairs, and Jamie went upstairs to see him. I got his autograph. I still have proof.
Really?
And it was like, that was an incredibly transformative moment with me, with the Course.
Yes.
Again, very early on, that's an early event, a very overt one. But much, more subtle ones have happened since. But just to finish the story, I mean, shows how dense I am, really, because 15 years go by. Yeah, so this is 1988, maybe? 15 years go by, or even more than that. I'm not sure. But I'm sitting at my computer thinking about this story. I think I was writing it up for this book, and I realized, well, if that works, who else do I want to meet? Right? That's how long it took me to think this thought. And I go, well, at the time I thought it'd be really cool to meet Bill Clinton. He wasn't president anymore, but he was. And I just let the thought go. So it's God as my witness. Next day, I get a robocall. The next day, I get a robocall at 10:30 a.m. Come campaign for Sheldon Whitehouse, running for U.S. Senate in the state of Rhode Island, accompanied by Bill Clinton. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And it says, the meeting with the campaign event will begin at 11 o'clock, half an hour from when the robocall's been given, and it's exactly half an hour drive to where the event was taking place. And I shook Bill Clinton's hand. How's that for delivery?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And what are the chances? So let's talk about law of probability.
Yeah.
What's the law of probability on that one? And if you read something that says it's what the Course says it is, walks you through these situations, and brings healing to relationships, and brings just a lot of inner healing around self-judgment and things like that, but also has these, signs and wonders, what do you want to call them? Synchronicities, but they're beyond synchronicities.
Yeah.
If that's happening, and it's also a comprehensive theology of love, I'm willing to consider the idea that, well, maybe this really is Jesus.
Yeah. Right?
And I understand that people would say, oh, you got to watch out for false Christ, right? I'm with that. I mean, the way I would say personally how I deal with that is I always surrender my life to Jesus Christ. That makes me, that I feel there's protection in that. Yeah. And I'm not saying anybody else should, I'm not trying to sell a religion at all. I'm not saying anybody should do that. But for me, I have a sense of protection on that. Because I think there's a very legitimate question as to whether anybody should ever believe any channeled material at all.
Yeah.
We don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
Right? So who are you going to listen to? Am I going to listen to the churches? Every single one that I've seen says this is the one and only way. I don't believe that's true. And they're hypocritical in what they're saying. I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm not saying they should be different. But when I sit in, I think there's beauty. I think there's community. But I also feel that there's holes in their theology. They're not teaching about love as the one power. They're teaching a whole bunch of other stuff. Maybe that's the false Christs. Right? To me, a true Christ would be something where someone's teaching just about love, just about non-judging, just about loving your enemies.